There once lived a man named Liang in a quiet farming village where success was measured by harvests. If your crops grew tall, you were respected. If your fields were empty, you were pitied. Liang had always been an ordinary farmer, not exceptional, not unsuccessful, just steady. But deep inside him lived a quiet desire to grow something extraordinary. One spring morning, he walked home from the market carrying a small cloth pouch tied tightly with twine. His wife May noticed the unusual spark in his eyes. "What did you buy?" she asked. Liang untied the pouch carefully. Inside were small, unimpressive seeds. "They are seeds of the Chinese bamboo," he said. May tilted her head. "Bamboo? That takes years." Liang nodded. At the market, the old merchant had looked him in the eye and said, "These seeds will test your patience more than your strength." Liang thought he understood. He did not. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Liang stood behind his house, staring at a patch of hardened soil. This was where his future would grow. He knelt down and pressed his hands into the dirt. It was dry, stubborn, resistant. He began clearing stones. Each rock he removed felt symbolic, as if he were removing doubt before it even arrived. For days he prepared the land. He tilled, he leveled, he enriched the soil with manure. When everything was ready, he planted the seeds gently, almost reverently. He covered them with soil and whispered, "Grow strong." From that day forward, Liang developed a ritual. Before breakfast, he watered the soil. After sunset, he checked it again. He imagined green shoots breaking through within weeks. He imagined neighbors asking questions. He imagined success. But weeks passed, nothing happened. The soil remained flat, unmoved, silent. By the end of the first year, the excitement had faded. Still, Liang was hopeful. "Some things take time," he told May. She smiled and brought him tea when he worked late. Their neighbor Chen leaned over the fence one afternoon. "Liang, what exactly are you growing?" "Bamboo," Liang replied confidently. Chen squinted at the empty field. "I see nothing." Liang laughed lightly. "You will." But when night fell and the world grew quiet, doubt spoke louder than confidence. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling. What if the seeds were defective? What if he misunderstood the instructions? What if he had wasted a year? He turned to his side. Tomorrow he would water again. Year 2 arrived. The soil still showed no sign of life. The whispers began. At the well, villagers spoke softly. "He waters that field every day." For what? Perhaps he believes it makes him look disciplined. Children began pointing when he walked past carrying buckets. "There goes the man who waters dirt." The words stung more than he expected. Mockery is easy to dismiss publicly. It is harder to silence privately. That year was dry. The sun was relentless. Carrying water became heavier. Sometimes, as sweat dripped into his eyes, he stared at the ground and felt foolish. He could plant rice and harvest in months. He could plant vegetables and see life within weeks. Instead, he chose this: invisible progress, invisible effort, invisible hope. Still, he kept watering. By year 3, the laughter had matured into judgment. His older brother visited and stood with arms crossed. "Liang," he said firmly, "this is pride disguised as patience. Stop before you lose more time." That sentence echoed inside him for weeks. Pride disguised as patience. Was he being wise or stubborn? At dinner one night, he barely spoke. May noticed. "Are you thinking of quitting?" she asked gently. Liang stared at his hands. 3 years, not a single green shoot. "I don't know anymore," he admitted. The next morning, he walked to the field slower than usual. He stood there for a long time without moving. Then he knelt and touched the soil. It looked dead, but something in him refused to believe that effort disappears. He picked up the bucket and watered. Year 4 was the hardest, because hope had become fragile. The village harvest festival arrived again. Fields were golden, barns were full, laughter filled the air. Liang stood beside his unchanged patch of land. Chen approached him quietly. "It's okay to admit something didn't work," Chen said, not unkindly. For the first time, Liang had no reply. That night, he sat alone outside under the stars. He imagined his life if he stopped. The ridicule would end. The embarrassment would fade. He would blend back into ordinary life. No more watering dirt, no more waiting. He stood up, walked toward the field, and dropped the buckets. 4 years. Nothing. His chest tightened. He closed his eyes. And in that silence, a thought surfaced. What if the growth is happening where I cannot see it? Roots, deep, unseen, preparing. The bamboo, if it ever rose, would need strength beneath the surface. And maybe strength takes longer than visibility. He opened his eyes, picked up the buckets, and watered again. Then came year 5. No thunder, no sign, just another morning. Liang walked to the field with quiet resignation. But halfway there, he felt something different. He couldn't explain it. He stepped closer. And there it was, a thin green shoot piercing through the soil, so small, so fragile, but undeniable. His breath caught in his throat. He fell to his knees. After 4 years of silence, life. He called for May. She ran barefoot into the field. They stared at the tiny shoot as if it were a miracle. Because it was. Within days, more shoots appeared. Within weeks, the impossible unfolded. The bamboo did not grow slowly. It surged upward, 10 feet, 20, 30, 40. The same neighbors who once mocked him now gathered in awe. How did this happen so fast? Chen asked. Liang looked up at the towering forest of bamboo swaying against the sky. It didn't, he said softly. It was 5 years in the making. The Chinese bamboo spends years building roots beneath the surface, roots strong enough to support extraordinary height. If it grew tall too quickly, without foundation, it would collapse. The years that looked empty were not empty. They were preparation. And maybe your life feels like year 2, or year 3, or year 4. Maybe you're watering something no one else understands. Maybe people laugh. Maybe they advise you to stop. Maybe you stare at your field at night and wonder if you're foolish. But unseen does not mean unbuilt. Silence does not mean stagnation. Delay does not mean denial. Roots grow in darkness. And when the time is right, you will not rise gradually, you will rise suddenly. And people will say, it happened overnight. But you will know, it was built in every unseen morning, every doubted decision, every time you chose to water when quitting was easier. So don't quit in year 4, because the man who looked foolish for 5 years was building something strong enough to stand. And when you rise, rise with roots deep enough to last.